the discussion for the game management plan for about 10 minutes. And then, Nani, if you want to give us an update on that as well.
Right. So Fresh Onishi organized a meeting with Kanalu Sprout, Ian Cole, Joey Mello, and it was supposed to be Calais, but then he was unable to attend, so I filled in this meeting. There wasn't. It was going to be about the game management plan, but there was an agenda, so I didn't know what the meeting was about before I got there. So I wasn't able to brush up on information, which I found it a real disadvantage in taking notes. But when I got there, so the agenda was to go over the recommendations from the previous game management plan drafts. There's 9 recommendations, and I asked for a print off of these so everyone here could read them, but I guess it didn't happen. But the agenda of the meeting was actually an evaluation of the 9 recommendations listed in the final game management draft. There was no there was no information ahead of time, so I might have missed some details, but overall, DOFA has been making some progress in meeting those recommendations for the game management plan. I'll just go over the title of them real quick. 1, establish an effective game management program. 2, facilitate cooperative management. That's working with the public. 3, quantitatively analyze game animal populations. Characterize available game habitat. Remove legislative impediments. Revise hunting rules. Reorganize hunter education program. Develop standard operating procedures. And publish hunting newsletters. So we went over these 9 things with our gentleman from DOFA, and I took notes. And these are the notes I got. So, Administrator Dave Smith has instructed DOFA that there will not be a game management plan as such, but rather he's calling it a hunting program. The hunting program will entail expanding hunting opportunity and reducing bag limits. Consideration for game count, rest, reproductive season, or refuge will be minimal. A hunting program rather than a conventional game management plan removes, they pointed out that it removes DOFA from liabilities and pressure from environmental communities and agencies representing endangered species. So it's about removing liability for them. It was suggested that the hunters get together to educate and agree upon an informal game management plan of their own. Seriously. It was, but then it was warned that any such practices may result in pressure on DOFA for more eradication of game species if any of the opponents got wind that the hunters were actually practicing a game management plan. So, number 2, I'm numbering my notes. DOFA has made some efforts in tracking game count and maintaining access. But while hunter participation and help is encouraged and needed in analyzing game populations, the complaint is that the public too often injects what is considered unwanted personal opinions and uneducated conclusions. This makes cooperative management difficult, as the validity of information coming from hunters is often perceived invalid. Note number 3, comments at the meeting were that game habitat is often prohibited. At times, game are taken out of areas where they're considered detrimental to endangered species and put in public hunting lands that are void of such. Public hunting lands cover over vast acreage, but I question that whether these lands provide adequate food, water, and shelter for game life. It was also mentioned that game habitat availability varies in different land designations and forest reserves. They say efforts are being made to improve characterization of game habitats and access as suggested in the recommendations. Number 4, changing rules, mandates, regulations, and statutes to accommodate game and hunter is still far off. Even acquiring an incidental take license would allow our game to coexist with endangered species to a degree. But they said this cannot be obtained without the completion of the long, nearly 20 years stalled habitat conservation plan. So we can't get even a license for the animals to nibble or browse just a leaf or two without being punished. Number 5, it was suggested that legislation and legal help be sought through legislators to decipher, assess, and interpret constitutional law, HRS 183D, HRS 195D. HRS 183D is questioned as to its meaning. DOFA is questioning the true meaning of 183D. They say now we need to go to the legislature, we need to get attorneys to reinterpret it, to prove that it means it's the protection of our game animals. And they said that 195 trumps 183D. For what reason? I don't know. DOFA is, and then they mentioned one of the recommendations was that DOFA reorganize the hunter education program, and they said that's DOCARE's job. And apparently there already is a newsletter that the wildlife coordinator has been producing. So DOFA personnel there encourages GMAC to continue working to establish the value of the game resources. To establish. They suggested we just continue establishing that they have value. They suggested that GMAC wait to hear from them as to how we may assist them in their game management plan efforts. On a positive note, Fresh Onishi submitted HCR 22 that does establish the worth of our game species that we've already established. That he took HCR 22 to DOFA and asked them to, I'm sorry, not DOFA, Department of Ag, and asked them to implement it. And Fresh Onishi is also seeking some legislative help for us. So on these notes, I would like to request that we open up a conversation on these, maybe next meeting. How we might respond. I would like to suggest that GMAC makes a stand on these things, like to hold ground of what classic conventional game management practices are, and to hold our ground for those.
Nani, let's just open that conversation now, since they're supposed to have the first draft by next meeting.
Yeah.
So, Teresa, when did you send that notes to us?
I didn't send these notes to you. This was a meeting that was just Tuesday.
Who was invited, and was anybody else?
I was invited to this meeting,
Yeah.
and then I had my vice chair go to the meeting.
Could any other member could have gone?
It was only specific to myself or a designee. And, yeah,
The reason for not inviting anyone else?
I didn't ask.
We didn't ask.
Fresh Onishi said it was a very closed meeting. I don't know why.
Who called the meeting?
Fresh Onishi.
For the,
Me.
for the reason of a game management plan?
Yes.